First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. I'm meteorologist Ross Puma. Chief Meteorologist Lewis Turner has the day off. He's starting his holiday weekend, his Labor Day weekend, a little bit early out there. So enjoy the day, Lou, if you're happening to tune in. We've been really watching a decent amount of rain across southeastern Georgia, moving into Duval County earlier this afternoon. We had a flash flood warning over the Hilliard area earlier today. That has since expired, thankfully. So no warnings currently in place across the First Coast. But what we do have is a stalled front, a stationary front that is draped across the First Coast and is pretty much parallel to I-10, really almost right over I-10 to a certain extent. That is bringing all of these chances for rain and thunderstorms. So you can see the storms and rain chances extend pretty much from the Atlantic Ocean the whole way out to really East Texas, western Louisiana, East Texas even. So this is what we got going on right now. North of I-10, so up across southeastern Georgia and our far northern parts of Florida here, you are north of the front, right? So you're going to have the chance for still some showers, perhaps elevated thunderstorms. Typically elevated means a lower risk of severe weather. The wind threat is lower, the hail threat's lower, and the tornado risk is almost zero in those instances. So you could still see a few rumbles of thunder, but primarily just some light to moderate showers possible from Jacksonville and I-10 northward for all of our folks across southeastern Georgia. From I-10 south, south of that stationary front, we haven't had nearly as much cloud cover throughout the early part of the day, so temperatures have been able to warm up a little bit further into the mid-80s. There's a little bit of some extra energy down there as well. So perhaps somewhat more unstable across some more of our southern regions, and that is why we're still seeing a little bit of some thunderstorm activity off to the southwest, or actually southwest of Gainesville and Lee County. There was a severe thunderstorm warning. I think that has since expired, but it's going to be those southern areas that we're watching for further thunderstorm development here through the rest of your Friday night. So really from about now up until 6:30, 7 o'clock here this evening, we're going to watch for a few more pop-up thunderstorms. So we're not expecting widespread coverage, but there will be at least a few isolated storms that we may have to watch for. Again, primarily south of I-10. We're thinking from Stark over to St. Augustine and then south of there. But for football fans out there, Sports Director Chris Porter, he's going to be live at our game of the week. You got the University Christian coming to Bishop Kenny to take on the Crusaders right across the river here from our First Coast News studios, actually. So dry out there right now. Again, we'll watch for some showers later on this evening, but things relatively dry on radar as the graphics really stall out there a little bit, at least across Duval County and the Jacksonville metro area, at least for the time being. I talked about the flash flood warning in Hilliard there in northwestern Nassau County. Rainfall totals really anywhere from about 2 to 4 inches. Similar story in northern Charlton County, also seeing a lot of localized heavy rainfall today, and you can sometimes see that when the actual storm coverage is not as much. If you think the storms are a little bit more isolated, so they're able to kind of use up more of the moisture in the atmosphere, and then it falls over a much smaller area or acreage, so to speak. So if you had, let's say, 10 storms, it kind of spreads the rainfall out over those 10 storms. Whereas if you only have 3 or 4 storms, you have the same amount of rain, but it's over, a much smaller, more localized area. That's kind of what we saw here earlier this afternoon, and we'll continue to watch for here tonight and perhaps even into the weekend as well. We'll touch on the weather impact alert that we have in place for your Saturday and your Sunday coming up in just a bit. But first, let's talk about it. Week 2 of Friday Night Football here in Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia. Sideline 2025. Temperature-wise, low 80s, upper 70s by the time kickoff rolls around, either by 6:30 or 7 p.m. tonight. I think most locations, storm chances will be low. I'm going to say only about a 10 to 15% chance of a thunderstorm that could impact any of our games locally here, whether you're in Clay County at Fleming Island or over in Ponte Vedra, Bowles, Rains, Mandarin. These are just some of the games that we're covering here at First Coast News. But again, some lower clouds. We could see a little bit of some mist at times, a little bit of a northeast breeze, some light shower still around. So we'll be mindful of that across all games, whether you're going out to the game of the week or really any of the other games. Fields will more than likely be wet. I would have the rain gear in your car, have it handy. but you may not need it. Might just need to dry off the bleachers out there this evening. This is tomorrow morning's lows. I guess if you're really interested in tomorrow morning's lows, low 70s, mid 70s, I didn't really mean to have that in there. Similar story to what we've seen here now over the past couple of days. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the weekend forecast, right? Labor Day weekend. You're more than likely going to have plans outside, whether you're planning on going to the beach or boating or whatever you have going on, a barbecue, just grilling out with a family picnic. There will be showers and storms around throughout the entirety of the weekend. Now, it's not going to be an all-day rain by any means, but we will have pockets of rain and we'll have pockets of dry time. So perhaps you get some rain early in the morning. You have a 4 to 5 hour window of relatively dry weather, and then by the late afternoon, early evening, you could see some more rain or even some thunderstorms begin to pop up. Again, this is all going to be from that stalled front that's draped across the first coast, and that's going to give rise to all of our rain chances. So I'll touch on it here in a quick second because I do think I have a graphic with that front shown. But marginal risk of excessive rainfall, we've already seen that here today, and that marginal risk, so that level 1 out of 4 risk for excessive rainfall, that's going to continue Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday as well, actually. So some heavy rain still going to be in the forecast. It's not really going to be until next Thursday or Friday that we finally kind of break this wet and stormy pattern, and we get a little bit more extended periods of sunshine and dry skies out there across the first coast. So this is what I was talking about. Stalled front right there. Areas to the north of the front will have a pretty stout northeast breeze, especially by Sunday and Monday. Winds anywhere from 10 to 15, even upwards of 20 miles per hour by your Labor Day. But the overall storm risk on the northern side of the front will be a little bit lower, whereas areas to the south of the front will have a higher chance for some thunderstorms. So that was kind of a quick look at Saturday. There's Sunday, showers and storms kind of moving from the east to the west, pushing onshore there, thanks to that pretty strong northeast breeze that's going to continue. So some locally heavy rainfall will be possible, along with some strong storms, primarily for this reason, actually. So Lou and I have shown this the past couple of days. This is really just trying to depict some of the energy in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere, what we call short waves. In the upper level flow. So those bright pinks and reds, that is a short wave essentially coming in across the first coast. First of which here is tonight. And then as we fast forward it through Saturday and Sunday, you'll see a few perhaps weaker ones, but still they're kind of coming across. They add some extra uplift and instability to the atmosphere that will give rise to showers and storms. So even when we do have like days like today, where it's a little bit more cloudy, you have a little bit more cloud cover, you don't get nearly as much daytime heating. And we'll often say, if you get a lot of sun and a lot of heating, that makes the atmosphere more stable. You get a lot of rising parcels of air. Even in those instances, when you get these short waves to come in, they still kind of stir the pot a little bit in the atmosphere and still can get things going. So that is kind of why we're still expecting not only some thunderstorms, but perhaps even some strong to severe ones as you head into your Saturday and your Sunday. You'll notice the winds out of the northwest. The mid to upper level winds going to be a little bit stronger here this weekend. So any strong downdrafts or downbursts that we get could produce wind gusts upwards of 40 to 60 miles per hour in a few of the isolated stronger storms. So we're not expecting widespread severe weather by any means, but just be weather aware. If you're outside this weekend, you're going to have a chance for rain off and on all day, and especially by the afternoon and evening hours. We will have a few thunderstorms. A few or a couple of them could be on the stronger to severe side. And as they move, especially closer to the St. Johns River and then closer to the coast, if they were moving from west to east at all, we could see a few quick spin-ups, as in a tornado, or at least at the very least a land spout or water spout. Again, we're not expecting a lot of those, but just be mindful. It is possible. The probability of it is not zero. So there is just the overall look at your Labor Day weekend forecast. 80% chance of rain or coverage of rain and storms for Saturday. Temperatures significantly cooler, well below average in the low to mid 80s. Pretty similar story on Sunday. Your Labor Day on Monday, still rain and storms in the forecast, but the overall coverage of storms will be a little bit lower. And I had mentioned that breeze, northeast, 10 to 20 miles per hour. So it is going to be a breezy day out there come Labor Day. Elsewhere, kind of in the area, if you're a college football fan, Week 1, college football, it is back. If you're going up to Athens to watch the Bulldogs take on the Thundering Herd of Marshall, looking to be pretty nice. There's going to be the chance for some showers early in the morning up there in northern Georgia, but I think by the time kickoff rolls around at 3:30, it should be mainly dry. You'll have a decent amount of sunshine. Temperature's going to be in the low to mid 80s there. Tallahassee, temperature-wise, very similar story, but Tallahassee's, of course, as many of you will likely know, it's right along I-10. It is still right up along that stalled front that we have in place here. So for all the Seminole fans who are heading out to Tallahassee for their game against Alabama this weekend, they're still going to be dealing with rain and thunderstorms off and on throughout the day there as well. So if you're planning on tailgating either in Tallahassee or even in Gainesville, right, for the Florida game tomorrow night at 7 p.m., both locations will have the chance for rain, will have the chance for storms. So take the tent, get it set up, make sure you're at least underneath any rain that might be falling out there. And of course, just be very mindful. There could be some storms around and in the forecast. So we just want you to stay weather aware and stay safe as best you can if you are out there tailgating at either of the big football games here this weekend. Now, a little bit closer, more in-depth look at your Saturday forecast. Morning temperatures in the mid-70s. This is showing that chance for rain early in the morning and into the afternoon. So this is what Futurecast is showing. Not super aggressive with the overall coverage. I think we will see a little bit more than what this is trying to show, but coastal areas will have a good chance for some showers through the morning. Then as you get into the afternoon and evening, I think it'll be a little bit more widespread, scattered to numerous showers and thunderstorms. And then even, by dinner time tomorrow night, there's going to be some pockets of just cloud cover, but overall dry conditions. And then there's going to be others where, some folks are seeing rain or even some heavy downpours that could lead to that localized flooding risk and concern there for your Saturday. Sunday, similar story. Rain chances all day. Some heavy downpours will be possible. Just know it's not going to be all day rain. So don't cancel any plans that you have. Still get out there, get them done. Just know you might need to have a backup plan in case you get rained out. Your Labor Day on Monday then, as we've kind of touched on already, quite breezy. We'll still have some scattered storms out there. Temperatures in the low to mid 80s. So as you look ahead to your Saturday, your Sunday, and your Monday, you kind of just squish them all together with regards to your rain totals over those 3 days. This is more than likely what it's going to come out to. So far inland southeast Georgia up towards northern Ware and Pierce counties, the Waycross area, you're probably looking anywhere from about a half inch to maybe a full inch of rain. Again, this is averaged out kind of over the whole area, right? And then you'll see that continues to increase the further to the east and southeast you go. So for most of the I-95 corridor in the Jacksonville area, we could see pockets of about 2 to 3 inches of rain here over the next 3 days. And then our coastal areas, thanks to that northeast breeze, we could have some very slow-moving, heavy downpours right along the coastline and our beaches. So I would say pretty much from Cumberland Island south down to Palm Coast and Flagler Beach, we could have some isolated pockets of about 3 to 4 inches there over the holiday weekend. So pretty wet, soggy weekend in the forecast there. Quick update for you on the tropics. There is an area of thunderstorms beginning to kind of billow out and blossom in Western Africa. This area has been highlighted for a low 30% chance of development there near the Cabo Verde Islands within the next 7 days. The good news, that's within the next 7 days. So as we look at some of the model comparisons quick, not really showing a whole lot. Might see something try to develop by next Tuesday or Wednesday, but even if something did, it still has about a 7 to 14 day track across the Atlantic, and no long range models are really showing any major potential for that, at least at this time. So here's a quick look at your 7-day forecast. Weather impact alert for your Saturday and Sunday, and then finally some drier weather by this time next week. Also, big day today. This is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina making landfall there in southern Louisiana. Meteorologist Robert Speta, he's got a beautiful story here to tell you about it. Robert, take it away.
It's been 20 years since Hurricane Katrina brought devastating conditions and a record-breaking storm surge here along the Gulf Coast, and specifically here in Bay St. Louis. 2 decades later, they're still feeling the impacts.
It's almost impossible to put it into words, I think, for just like normal folks that can't get their head around what happened.
Now, this is Josh Morgan. He holds the record for the most eye wall penetrations on Earth for any storm chaser, and he just recently built a home in Bay St. Louis.
look at this entire neighborhood around us. Just look all around, okay? It was basically obliterated. Every house you see was built after Katrina because this whole neighborhood was just wiped off the map. It looked like Hiroshima, just like a nuclear bomb had dropped. And it was because of that down the street. You could see it right there, the Gulf. It just came up. Some folks say it was over 30 feet, and it just swept this neighborhood clean.
So you say it swept it clean, and there's the Gulf right there. How high was the estimated storm surge that came through this area? And, of course, this was all with Katrina. Can you just talk about how the potency of that storm?
Absolutely. One of the things that makes Katrina so distinctive was that it was the highest storm surge on record in any storm in the Western Hemisphere. So this was like a cataclysmic event. It was a Category 3 hurricane. In terms of winds, it wasn't that distinctive, but the storm surge was enormous. And like I said, it was record-breaking. Now, the official estimate is 28 feet, but a lot of folks around here, locals, will tell you no way it was higher. Now, I don't take a position on that, but what I do know is that the destruction was fitting for a record-breaking storm. It was off the charts. And by the way, not just here in Bay St. Louis, but the entire Mississippi coast, out to Gulfport, Biloxi, even to Pascagoula, even into Alabama. And that's one of the things that made Katrina, or I should say another thing that made Katrina special wasn't just that the storm surge was high, it was that the area of really high storm surge, over 20 feet, was miles and miles and miles.
So you've been, how many storms now?
I've been inside the inner cores of 80 hurricanes and typhoons, 80, which is a world record.
And I guess based on your experience and based on the storm surges you've seen, what makes the kind of the Gulf Coast more vulnerable when it comes to that?
I'm glad you asked that because there's a lot of factors, and the U.S. Gulf Coast is one of the most vulnerable places on Earth, okay? I think if there's two places on Earth that are just crazy vulnerable to storm surge. One is the U.S. Gulf Coast, and the other is the top of the Bay of Bengal, where the country Bangladesh is, okay? And the reason that both these areas get such spectacular storm surges is because the water offshore is really shallow. So I grew up in New York on Long Island, and when I would go to the beach when I was growing up, I'd walk out into the water, and 20 feet out you're in deep water. Okay, here you walk a mile out and you're still up to your, not even up to your waist. Wow. The water is so shallow, and this sounds really counterintuitive to a lot of folks, but the shallower the water offshore, it's just some fluid dynamic thing, the bigger the storm surge can be. So we have this special shallow water here. The top two storm surges in American history were both in Mississippi, right around here.
Wow. So you were talking about this coming through. So lots like this that are still empty. Is this just kind of what was left over from Katrina 20 years ago?
Any empty lots around Old Town, Bay St. Louis, you can assume that there was a house there that maybe stood for 100 years or more that was then just wiped away, and it hasn't been built back. But look at it this way, this whole area after Katrina was clean. If you go back at Google Maps street level and you go back to 2008, there's nothing. There's just a field and that one sort of cinder block house next to mine. That was it. This place was just swept clean. So most of the neighborhood is actually built back. It's actually, to me, it's incredible what they've done in 20 years. But all around Bay St. Louis, you will find an empty lot here or there. You'll find a staircase to nowhere, the front steps of a house that's no longer there. There's still these sort of, I call them they're almost like the grave sites of Katrina.
What would be your advice, especially ahead of any storm? And we're talking about not building a house, but just preparing, especially for a neighborhood like this, or even on the Jacksonville area, where you do have those lying flood-prone areas. What would be your advice, based on all of your experience and everything, ahead of a hurricane or just hurricane season in general?
I would say when a hurricane is coming, there's two basic things you got to know. Is your house high enough to escape storm surge or other kinds of flooding that might occur? And is it strong enough to withstand the wind? So there's two different hazards, and they hit houses different ways, and you have to make sure that where you are is cool for both, that it's going to withstand both. And sometimes it's not clear, and I would also say, when in doubt, leave and ride it out in a sturdier building, ride it out in an official shelter. Don't take a chance, because I'll say this, there's nothing scarier than being in a house that starts to fill with water or blow apart during a hurricane. That's just one of the scariest things. Even for me, I'm a storm chaser, I'm experienced. I don't like that. Even though Katrina was 20 years ago, people here talk about it like it was yesterday because the scars were so deep, the impacts were so big. Everyone's life changed like dramatically from this hurricane. I think most people down here in coastal Mississippi, I think their lives, they divided into two phases, before Katrina and after. It bent the arc of everyone's life so people don't forget it, and I think that it'll always be that way. Now, in a place that hasn't had a hurricane for a really long time, or a devastating one, for example, the Jacksonville, St. Augustine kind of area, you know, I think that what happens is people get complacent. They just start to forget that there can be another big event like a Dora or something like that. I mean, my God, it's been over 60 years now. And I think that that creates danger, creates complacency. I imagine people in Northeast Florida think, oh, you know, we can't really get hit or we're safe. And you're not. You know, these things always return. And I think there's a challenge in helping people viscerally understand the danger and respect it.
Well, people that might be moving into hurricane country, albeit along the Gulf Coast or maybe in Florida, what is your advice for building a new house, looking for a new house? What should people be looking for to protect themselves against future storms?
Well, I think one of the most important things is your elevation, and that was something that mattered to me. Now, this neighborhood was devastated by Hurricane Katrina storm surge, but Katrina storm surge was the highest on record in the Western Hemisphere, probably like a 300 to 500 year event. Otherwise, this neighborhood is actually pretty high. This ground here is 19 feet, which is actually pretty good for coastal Mississippi, and you can see I raised it a few feet above that. So my number one piece of advice is make sure you've got some decent elevation, or if you don't have good elevation, the other thing is to really focus on building a kind of house that's high enough, you know. Like, to boil it down, I'd say there's three things that I really sort of cared about as I built the house. And by the way, these are things you can all improve in an existing house. The first thing is the roof. As I always say, if your roof stays on during a hurricane, you're going to be okay. But if it tears off, it's game over. So you've got to make sure that roof stays on. This is a standing seam metal roof, which is one of the best kinds for getting through a hurricane. I went through a Category 5 in the Bahamas, high-end Category 5, and the houses with these kinds of roofs got through it and it stayed on. So that's one thing I'll say. These kind of roofs are more expensive, but they actually make a difference. The second thing is make sure you've got some kind of system for protecting your windows, because your windows are like the Achilles heel of your house. Now, a window breaking during a hurricane, it's the problem isn't just that you're going to get a little rain in. It's that once the wind gets inside the structure, it's like air getting in a balloon. It can do all kinds of additional structural damage. You got to keep the wind out. And there's two ways basically. One is to have impact glass, okay? The other is to have some kind of window covering. And so for me, I went with the window coverings. These shutters here, they're not just a decoration. These are actually real shutters that I close and seal when a hurricane comes. And you can see it's got this shiny, this is a polycarbonate layer. It's another layer of sort of impact resistance to protect the house from flying debris. But when a hurricane's coming, I just shut this whole house up. And that's what works for me. If you don't have one of those two things, you're going to be stuck boarding, which is a real pain in the butt. And the third thing I'll say is your siding really matters. I think of this, like my siding, as like the house's coat of armor. Okay, one of the scariest things about a hurricane is when the wind really starts to rip, the flying debris, the wreckage flying through the air. It's one of the scariest things. And that flying wreckage can actually penetrate through walls. So you need good hard siding. And I'm not talking wood and I'm not talking vinyl. You need fiber cement like this. It looks like wood, but it's not. This is from James Hardie, and this stuff, like I said, it's the coat of armor that protects my house. Also, take hurricanes out of the equation. The other thing that matters is that it's moisture resistant. It doesn't rot or mold or anything like that. It doesn't even burn, and termites hate it. So I would say get siding on your house that is climate and weather resistant. I think that's something that's going to make you happy, even if you're not getting hurricanes.
I'm meteorologist Lisa.
Definitely smart to heed advice from those people that have been through some of these destructive storms and seen the impacts on their community. I'm meteorologist Robert Speta, First Coast News, on your side.